I represent the Hingham Varsity B team, and I am the first affirmative speaker. First of all, I'd like to thank our judges for taking the time to judge this debate, my partner for all of her hard work, and of course our negative team, whom I'm sure will engage us in a lively debate. Resolved, the United States federal government should substantially increase its non-military exploration and/or development of the Earth's oceans. Need for change. Today, rare earth metals used in machinery ranging from assembly line robots to green technologies like wind energy are inseparable from U.S. commercial interests, contributing $300 billion to the national economy each year. Given the strategic value of these materials, it is highly disconcerting that the United States depends on foreign sources of rare earth metals like China, which currently accounts for over 90% of global supply. Not only do China's imposed quotas and high tariffs put American manufacturers at a competitive disadvantage, but in recent years, China has cut exports by more than 70%, measures which caused the prices of rare earth elements to double between the first and second quarter of 2011. According to Floyd Brown, president of the Western Center for Journalism, quote, "Until we have a strategy, we are hostage to the Chinese and can only hope they don't cut our supplies the same way they cut Japan's after a territorial dispute in 2010, unquote. In 2013, the United States imported $260 million worth of rare earth metals, over 90% from China. To protect American interests from another rare earth panic, the federal government must work to reduce our current dependence on foreign rare earth production. Fortunately, rare earth metals exist in concentrations up to 10 times those on land in the deep seabed. Thus, we propose that the U.S. federal government sponsor Lockheed Martin's 2 existing deep seabed claims under the International Seabed Authority, or ISA. Capable of providing the United States with an alternative source of rare earth metals, Lockheed Martin has already invested $500 million in research and development related to deep-sea mining, and is currently the only U.S. company with existing claims to deep-seabed sites. However, despite possessing the necessary equipment and capital to mine these sites, Lockheed Martin stated in a 2012 letter to John Kerry, then Senate Foreign Relations Committee chairman, that the, quote, multi-billion-dollar investments now required to launch an ocean-based resource development business must be predicated upon the clear legal rights established and protected under the treaty-based framework of the Law of the Sea Convention, including the International Seabed Authority. Thus, without U.S. sponsorship under the ISA, Lockheed Martin will not develop its existing USA-1 and USA-4 deep seabed claims. Inherency. Unfortunately, the U.S. federal government is unable to sponsor Lockheed Martin's claims until the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS, is ratified by the Senate. Despite signing the treaty, the United States did not ratify UNCLOS in 1982 due to 6 conditions regarding deep-sea mining that Nanette Terenzi, Rear Admiral of the U.S. Navy and former assistant to President Ronald Reagan, deemed unfavorable to U.S. interests. However, according to Terenzi, quote, "There was a successful renegotiation of Part 11 that resulted in achieving all of the Reagan conditions in 1994, unquote, making the UNCLOS highly favorable to U.S. commercial and national security interests." In the summer of 2012, the Senate voted again on the ratification of UNCLOS, but the measure failed, 1 vote short of a 2/3 majority. The 34 dissenting senators, all Republican legislators, likely blocked the measure due to the proximity of the 2012 election, but many agree that UNCLOS would achieve ratification post-election, as it has the support of both the powerful U.S. Chamber of Commerce and Obama administration. Once UNCLOS is reintroduced and ratified, the United States will possess the legal capability to sponsor contractors like Lockheed Martin that it has lacked since 1982. Topicality. As the affirmative team, we reserve the right to define all terms. The American Heritage Dictionary of the English language defines the U.S. federal government as the central government of the United States, and the Collins English Dictionary defines its as associated in some way with. We argue that activities like deep-sea mining in international waters are inherently U.S. federal government activities because they not only depend on U.S. sponsorship, but become the responsibility of the United States under Article 139 of UNCLOS. The Oxford Dictionary and Thesaurus define substantially as important or valuable. Our plan meets the first definition because continued rare earth reliance on China is of great concern for U.S. governmental and commercial interests. It meets the second definition because rare earth minerals help to contribute more than $300 billion to the U.S. economy each year. The Oxford College Dictionary defines increase as to make greater in size or amount. Lockheed Martin has stated that U.S. sponsorship would allow the company to make multi-billion-dollar investments in deep-sea mining, a clear quantitative increase in U.S. development of the oceans. And/or defines means either or both of 2 stated possibilities, and Black's Law Dictionary defines military as relating to the armed forces. Thus, we address the ocean's non-military development. Finally, the American Heritage College Dictionary defines develop as to bring from latency to or toward fulfillment. The International Seabed Authority will not legally recognize Lockheed Martin's two existing deep seabed claims unless it can secure U.S. state sponsorship under the law of the sea, stalling the company's investment in deep sea mining. Our plan removes this barrier to private investment, allowing for its fulfillment through rare earth extraction from the seafloor, which was previously defined as development for the purposes of the Coastal Act. Solvency. According to John Negerpont, former U.S. Deputy Secretary of State, Lockheed Martin is, quote, prepared to harvest critical rare earth metals on the deep seabed, unquote, upon receiving sponsorship, thus challenging foreign and especially Chinese control of these invaluable materials. A Japanese team of scientists estimate that mid-Pacific reserves, where Lockheed Martin's claims in the Clarion-Clipperton Zone, or CCZ, are located, contain 80 to 100 billion tons of rare earth minerals, in addition to valuable materials like nickel, copper, cobalt, and magnesium. In fact, just 1 square kilometer in the CCZ would yield about 1/5 of annual rare earth consumption. This exceeds annual U.S. consumption of 15,000 to 18,000 tons, and Lockheed Martin's USA 1 and USA 4 claims extend 234,000 square kilometers in total. Meanwhile, according to a 2012 article in the New Zealand Herald, the United Kingdom expected to earn about $74 billion over 3 decades through its own deep-sea mining projects in the same region as Lockheed Martin's claims, the CCZ. Thus, U.S. sponsorship should secure at least comparable benefits for an American industry given the greater size of the USA 1 and 4 claims in comparison to those of the UK. Thus, in addition to lessening U.S. dependence on foreign rare earth production, our plan would generate American jobs and revenue for the U.S. Treasury. To recapitulate, there is a need for change in American production of rare earth metals due to U.S. reliance on foreign exports from hostile countries like China. This would be solved by U.S. sponsorship of Lockheed Martin following the ratification of UNCLOS, an inherent legal barrier to maritime development by non-parties like the United States. Furthermore, our plan is topical because government sponsorship will bring private investment in deep-sea mining from latency to fulfillment in a way that is important and valuable to American interests, securing our nation's future. Thank you, and I now stand open for cross-examination.
Thank you. May I please have a copy of your plan?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Now, Lockheed Martin, the company, would be doing the actual deep-sea mining, correct?
Absolutely, but it could not do so without U.S. sponsorship.
Thank you. Now, what was the last time that the Congress voted on the law of the sea?
2012, when it was not approved by only 1 vote.
Okay, thank you. Do you have evidence that it will be approved now?
Yes, after the 2012 election, when obviously political tensions
May
were
we
white
see
hot.
that, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Now, you mentioned that the United States mining and their claims in the ocean are regulated by the law of the sea currently? Okay, thank you. Now, you mentioned in your plan that this plan would generate revenue for the Treasury and would generate jobs. Do you have any evidence of this?
Well, if Lockheed Martin's going to be making $74 billion, it's going to
Do
need
you have
people.
evidence of this?
Absolutely, it's going to make $74 billion that's taxed by the United States government.
Now, are we currently mining the oceans?
The U.S. federal government, no, not currently deep seabed mining.
Okay. Now, excuse me. Now, you said that Lockheed Martin already has these mining places, correct? And that these mining places aren't recognized by other countries?
Yes, they predate the 1982 Law of the Sea Convention. Thus, they are owned by Lockheed Martin, but until the Law of the Sea is ratified, we can't sponsor them under the ISA, giving them what they call essential legal rights that would be protected under the treaty-based structure.
Is Lockheed Martin mining that now, at the moment?
No, they cannot, and they will not unless they have what they call clear legal rights as established under the treaty.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Nick Veros, creating First Negative Petition Stang's Varsity Negative 18. In our review of the affirmative team's plan put forth this evening, we have found several core deficiencies that make it impossible for the judges to vote in favor on any stock issue of the affirmative team's plan, starting with the stock issue of topicality. The affirmative team did reserve the right to define alternatives, but we have the right to put up counter definitions for the judge to decide. We take issue first with the federal government being involved in this plan. The federal government in the plan is simply permitting Lockheed Martin, as the affirmative team has admitted, to mine in the middle of the ocean. Evidence here, as precedent set by the Supreme Court case of Indian Tribes versus Marsh, does not, giving permission or permitting a private institution to take an action does not necessarily mean the federal government is federalizing that action. To quote the case directly, these cases did not hold that the court permitted federalize the unregulated private development so as to render the private actions federal actions. To put it quite simply, the affirmative plan is not federal. The affirmative plan is also not an increase. Increase does not mean to create. Increase, as defined by Merriam-Webster Dictionary, is to become progressively greater. Increase does not include create, as set by another Supreme Court case, Union Loan and Trust Company versus Southern California Motor and Road Company. Increase, quote, does not include or apply to the first creation. The affirmative team admitted in my partner's cross-examination of the first affirmative that none of this mining by the federal government currently exists, so therefore it wouldn't be an increase, it'd be a creation, which is non-topical according to the definitions we have put forward. To the next definition. The affirmative team did not define the terms exploration or development, so far as we heard. If they have, then we would like to propose these counter definitions. Exploration, according to Merriam-Webster, is the act of exploring something, which is not very difficult to figure out. Development is, excuse me 1 second, the act or process of growing or causing something to grow or become larger or more advanced. Neither of these are occurring. The affirmative team is simply taking a pre-existing, resource, if you will, of the ocean floor and exploiting it. They're not exploring it, they're not developing it, they're taking it, which is not exploration or development. Moving on to the stock issue of inherency. The affirmative team stated that they lost the vote to approve of this law in 2012 by 1 vote. Now, while this is forensics and debate, we need evidence to back up all claims. My partner and I are prepared to argue and defend with evidence that that is a significant indicator that if put up again, it will be passed, therefore completely destroying the inherent barrier of the affirmative team's plan. The key issue of this debate will become, as we predicted it will become, the need. There is no need for the affirmative plan. While the affirmatives were correct in saying that at a time, China did control the rare earth metal market, according to the Pentagon, a new study released recently, rare earth supplies in the United States are meeting defense needs. To quote from Bloomberg, domestic rare earth supplies will meet the United States defense industry's needs by 2013, which, mind you, was 2 years ago now, so it has already been met. For the materials that go into military motors and electronics, according to a Pentagon report, also from the Reuters in Washington, the 2011 scare about Chinese control of rare earth metals critical for defense manufacturing has faded. Simply put, the need's no longer there. Moving on to the stock issue of solvency. In order for the affirmatives to win the stock issue of solvency, the plan must indeed solve their need. While the negative team does believe that there is no need to be solved, therefore they couldn't possibly win solvency, if the judges decide otherwise, we are prepared to defend our claims to the stock issue of solvency through the ability of the through the affirmative team's ability to solve this plan concisely, clearly, and within a sustainable budget. The United States is an ocean nation. No one will deny that fact. However, we are limited not by the law that the affirmative team is stating as an inherent barrier, by an exclusive economic zone to where we can legally develop within the world's oceans. We have an area, to quote from this NOAA map, excuse me, the form here, the United States economic exclusive zone is the largest in the world, spanning over 13,000 miles of coast. It extends 200 nautical miles offshore. This is where we legally have the right to develop. If we develop in the middle of the ocean where these rare earths are supposedly located, which we don't need to do to begin with, we would actually be violating more than just the proposed United Nations law that they're claiming as their inherent barrier. Therefore, their plan cannot solve the problem. As a negative team, we have the right to fight and will fight the stock issue of disadvantages, and there are many disadvantages to the affirmative team's plan. According to EMBO reports from EMBO reports, my apologies, Gambling in the Deep Sea, written by Laura Roth of EMBO reports, scientists have made and continue to make exciting discoveries in the depths of the ocean. However, there are risks involved. These risks, in any mining whatsoever, are described in Nova Next from PBS.org. The risks of mining underwater were evident in the fact that plans have been shelved so far due to contract disputes, as well as the inherent risks of mining underwater, which include expanding ocean acidification, damaging key environments and habitats under the ocean, as well as disturbing current geothermal events. My apologies. Marine mining is called by the Observer an underwater gold rush that sparks fears of ocean catastrophe. By mining underwater, we could possibly experience many, many negative side effects that don't currently exist. A major disadvantage that would apply to any plan that has to do with the resolve this year would be ocean acidification, which was just discussed a few seconds ago. Ocean acidification is the process of the gradual lowering of the ocean's pH level, which can severely damage, even wipe out, and drive to extinction species of coral reefs, different species of fish, and entire habitats underwater that we need to sustain life. I'd like to take this time just to sum up the arguments I've made so far. Topicality, the affirmative team's plan is not topical, it is not federal. It is not an increase, because an increase cannot count as creation, cannot count as an increase. It is not exploration or development whatsoever. On the stock issue of inherency, the affirmative team, we have reason to believe and will be prepared to fight and argue with evidence the affirmative team's inherent barrier will and can and will be lifted. Stock issue of need, the affirmative team's need lies 4 years ago, not now. There's evidence from the Pentagon and many other sources that there is no need for us to invest in rare earth metals because it's already happening and we already have a substantial supply of rare earth metals in the United States of America. Stock issue of solvency, well, we believe the affirmative team cannot solve a need that doesn't exist. If the judges do deem that there is a need, they can't solve the problem anyway because of legal regulations that lie outside the law that the affirmative team has mentioned thus far. Disadvantages, there are many, including increasing global warming, ocean acidification, the disturbance of geothermal events, as well as many other disadvantages my partner will outline during this debate. Thank you, and I now send over Professor.
So first of all, you attacked the topicality of our plan,
Yes.
stating that it would not be applicable to federal government. Yes?
It would not.
Can you repeat for me our definition of bits?
Can you repeat your definition of this?
Yes, our team's definition of bits, or would you like me to read it to you?
I'd like you to read.
Okay. We define it as associated in some way with. Are you aware that Lockheed Martin cannot obtain sponsorship under the ISA without the aid of the federal government?
I'm not an expert on this, so
Well, are you aware that that's true?
I have to see some evidence of that.
Absolutely, and get it for you.
Thank you very much.
If the United States government is integral to Lockheed Martin gaining sponsorship under the ISA, is it not associated in some way with the development of the deep sea dive?
It is, but that's not a direct action according to the evidence that we put forward, which is a Supreme Court case which the government uses as a standard to hold. It is a standard by which it judges
I have a
its other
question for you
actions.
about that. Does that establish that it's not federal ownership of any lands that are regulated by them?
It actually establishes that it's not a federal action. It's not a federal action. The evidence directly states that.
You also say that an increase or development could not be a creation, it had to be a continuation of something that's already started, yes?
An increase needs to be a continuation of the increase. And you stated that none of this is being done by the federal government, so it can't be an increase.
Are you aware that the federal government has already explored and developed the ocean through federal agencies like the NOAA or the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration?
I am very well aware of that. It's not currently doing the mining underwater for rare earth metals, what
But-
that entails.
But it only implies a development, an increase in development, so I wouldn't.
How is taking something from the bottom of the ocean that already exists, developing it in any way? You're simply taking it.
Next, you obviously addressed inherency, stating that it failed by 1 vote, and you stated that it would clearly pass. But do we not need to overcome our inherent barrier that we provide to prevent it from becoming a disadvantage?
Well, you said that the vote occurred in 2012, correct?
Absolutely.
Now, do you have any evidence that votes occurred since then?
A vote has not occurred since then, but are
Do
you
you have any
aware?
evidence that the vote has occurred since then? Because if it has, we could completely be talking about something completely different.
Are you aware that the first time before 2012 that the treaty came to the Senate was 1982? That's 20 years. Absolutely. So would you not agree that occasionally an issue is tabled, perhaps because there are other issues to discuss?
Yes, but as the issue of exploring the oceans does become more prominent through forums like this, I believe the federal government will not take a decision. And we have evidence that they actually want to explore more.
You also see that the Pentagon stated that we are currently meeting our defense needs for rare earth metals. But
Yes.
I have a question for you. Can you provide evidence that we are currently meeting manufacturing needs for rare earth metals, considering that they contribute $300 billion to the U.S. economy each year?
So if the federal government were to provide manufacturing metals, how is the federal government actually interested in developing anything? And they just be collecting metals and giving them to companies to manufacture.
Time. Thank you.
Hello, and for the first time, my name is Hannah Bosnian, and I'm the second affirmative speaker for the Hingham Varsity B team. To save time, I would like to thank everyone in this room. It has already been a very incredible, wonderful, and amazing debate. And I thank you all for the opportunity to be standing up here today. To begin with, topicality. The negative team has contested our definition of federal government, stating that it must be the federal government itself mining for these rare earth metals within the ocean in order for the federal government to be developing the oceans. However, our definition, however, the NOAA, which is a federal government group committee will be regulating Lockheed Martin once it begins mining within the oceans. It will already be, like, the NOAA will regulate Lockheed Martin within the oceans. I'm sorry, to continue, the negative team has contested our definition of development and exploring. I believe they did not hear the definition that we had put forth for development, because our definition of development is in fact to bring from latency to or towards fulfillment. And since we are bringing these mines which have not begun mining from latency, from their inactive state, to or towards fulfillment of the profiting goals of Lockheed Martin, then our definition of development is met and our plan is topical. The negative team has also talked about increase, as stating that we are in fact creating something as we are starting to mine within the oceans. And our definition of increase is to increase in size or amounts. Yes, it is true that these mines already exist, but the actual mining has not begun yet. Once this mining begins, the profits of Lockheed Martin will increase in their size and in their amount. Hence, our definition of increase is met, and our plan is topical. To continue, the negative team has talked about needs, stating that China is, in fact, a reliable trade partner, that they have all of these rare earth metals that we need. They have stated that China perhaps will meet the quotas stated within the United States, although they have not provided evidence of China actually meeting the quotas within the United States. However, here, I have a quote that says, China has broken international trade law by restricting the export of these rare earth elements and other metals crucial to modern manufacturing. Hence, China is not a reliable trade source. Their 90% monopoly is still set. It is very harmful to us, and because of their issues, they are having several issues with land mining, with exporting, with meeting the global quota, with meeting this 90% demand. We need to become self-sufficient in mining these rare earth metals, and we cannot rely on China anymore to give us these very, very essential metals. I'd like to talk for a minute about what these metals are actually used for. They're used in green technologies, they're used in cancer treatment, cell phones, televisions, computers, many things that are crucial to our everyday lives and to, in fact, the lives of many, many other people. To continue, I would like to talk about inherency. The negative team has stated that because it was one vote short of being passed, that it is not an inherent barrier. Since the next time it will come up in Congress, it will be passed. I state, yes, Congress does argue a lot. One vote may seem very close, but Congress does not have infinite members. One vote means that there is a type of barrier in that vote, in discussing that law. And whenever that law does come up, whatever it may be, however the process, whether it be passed or not, it is still set right now. UNCLOS is not ratified right now. Lockheed Martin has stated that they will not begin mining until UNCLOS is ratified. Hence, our inherent barrier is still a barrier, and our argument for inherency still stands. To move on to solvency, the negative team has stated that since we are within international waters and not within U.S. waters, we cannot mine where we are stating we will be mining, and our plan is not solvable, or our solvency is invalid. However, our claims, Lockheed Martin's claims, are within the USA 1 and USA 4 zones, and will be regulated under the ISA by a facet of the U.S. federal government, and that facet is the NOAA. So hence, not only is our plan regulated by the federal government, but it is also within lands within the United States. And I would like to talk to you about some advantages of our plan. First off, it costs little to nothing to put into effect. Second off, as I stated, rare earth metals are green. They're used in every type of green technologies. The negative team has stated that yes, this may cause a little bit of environmental disturbance, but environmental disturbance is nothing if we can get solar panels, if we can get windmills, if we can stop mining for oil in oceans, if we can solve the actual problem that is causing environmental failure, global warming, etc. And the way that we solve this issue is by mining for these rare earth metals in the most effective way possible. Thank you very much. I now stand up for cross-examination.
The development. You claiming, or exploration that you claim is occurring in your plant.
We are not claiming exploration, we are claiming
So
development.
this development is the mining, correct?
This development is the profitable gain of Lockheed Martin from this mining. So in essence, the development is caused by the mining.
Okay. Now what is being developed?
The actual thing that is being developed, our definition of development is to bring from latency
Okay,
to a
and
towards fulfillment.
so the collected material is being developed, correct?
No, the actual thing that is being developed is Lockheed Martin's profits, or for
So
say.
you're developing the profits of Lockheed Martin, correct?
No, we are
That's what
developing.
you just stated.
No, I'm sorry, I stated wrong. As I told you, we had stated development is to bring from latency to a towards fulfillment. These mines are inactive. We will be activating them and beginning to mine.
Now, could you
Bringing them
just-
from latency to a towards fulfillment.
Thank you. Could you just read the title of this article real quick?
I'm sorry, I'm legally blind and have a lot of trouble reading the
My
language.
apologies.
No problem.
Okay, so it says that permitting does not mean it's federal. You are aware that the United States federal government uses Supreme Court cases to determine the legality and,
We're not really permitting it. The U.S. federal government is regulating Lockheed
regulate,
Martin.
but are they doing this?
If the
Yes or
U.S.
no, are
government,
they doing this development?
since it is required for Lockheed Martin to have
Yes
the
or
U.S.
no?
government pass, I would say yes.
That's what
By
we
our
disagree.
definitions of all the
Okay,
statements, yes.
inherency. So do you have any evidence that votes have occurred since then?
We do, my partner, actually, votes have not occurred since then, as far as I
Okay.
know. If you have
And
evidence
so
that says that
you
they
don't have
have,
evidence
then,
of votes, well, the burden of proof lies in the affirmative team.
of course.
So if you cannot provide evidence, how do we know for certain in this room right now that they haven't already passed it?
I feel like if it had already passed, it would be news. I feel like we would know that.
What if
And
they
I feel
passed
like
it 20 minutes ago?
20 minutes ago, then that would be incredible, and we probably wouldn't be having
Exactly, but we
this debate.
wouldn't know, would we?
We wouldn't know.
Thank you
but-
very much. Ms. Stockton, can you just read this?
Okay.
My apologies.
You can read it, no problem.
Stockton, the title of this article that I have in front of me says, Rare Earth supplies in the United States to meet defense needs. How does this involve China if the rare earth metals that we need to meet our needs are in the United States?
Where are they in the U.S.? Because they're not in the U.S. They're in
Actually,
China. We're
it says
getting
it right
90%
here.
of them from
Domestic
China.
rare earth supplies. Domestic means within the country.
Yeah,
They are in
literally
the United States.
where?
If they are in the United States, do we need to really care about what China's doing if we have them here? Yes or no?
I would say we do need to care because yes, landmines did exist, but they are terrible. They are very
Do you have any evidence that they
harmful.
don't work?
Yes, we do. We
Can I
will
please
give it to
see?
you, of course. My
Thank you
partner will
very
give it to you in a minute.
Hello, for the first time today, I am Daniel Bailey debating second negative for Bishop Steng's Farsi negative 80. I would like to begin on the stock issue of topicality. Firstly, we'd like to propose a counter definition to the affirmative team's definition of topicality. I'm sorry, not of topicality, development. Terribly sorry about that. We have a definition from Merriam-Webster that says that it is the act, process, result of development. Now, clearly this means that you're developing something that is tangible. You're developing the ocean, in this case, as the result specifies. This plan, as the second affirmative has said, is developing Lockheed Martin's profits. It's not developing the ocean. It is developing their profits, which clearly is not topical to the result. The result clearly states that we should be developing the oceans. Additionally, on the stock issue of topicality, we have a definition here from Union Loan versus Trust Company versus Union Loan and Trust Company versus Southern California Motor Road Company. Now, this is a Supreme Court definition, and so the United States federal government is ruled by these definitions, and they have to obey them. And it says that increase, and I quote, does not include or apply to the first creation. Meaning, basically, that if you're increasing something, you can't create it. It's not creation. That would be creation, not increase. There's nothing to build upon. There's no increase to build upon. And this type of deep sea mining by the United States and by Lockheed Martin is not already happening, and so it would be creating this deep sea mining, not increasing it. Onto the stock issue of inherency. The affirmative team has provided us with no evidence that the law of the sea even exists, and if it does indeed exist, that the Congress currently opposes it. They've cited, but not given us evidence for, a 2012 vote that stated that the law of the sea was blocked from being ratified by one vote. Congress has changed since 2012. clearly. And so we cannot trust something that is from 2012, from a different Congress at a different time under different circumstances. Additionally, the affirmative team has provided us with no evidence that this will ever be passed, or that there is any inclination to pass it. Therefore, we would like to claim the stock issue of inherency. On the stock issue of need, we have evidence here, firstly from Bloomberg. It says that rare earth supplies in the U.S. to meet defense needs, Pentagon says. There's no need for this plan. We already have the we already have the rare earth supplies in the United States. We don't need to worry about what China's doing. We don't need to worry about how China's breaking trade laws. We already have the rare earth supplies. They're already there in the United States, available for use. Additionally, further in the Pentagon's report, and expanded upon in a different article about the report, says that the Pentagon says rare earth elements are less at risk. So we have less risk of not getting them anyway. And we already have lots of them, so there is no need to get this plan. On the stock issue of solvency, we do not currently have the money to invest in this plan. We simply do not. We have an over $18 trillion national debt to other countries. We do not have the money to go investing in deep sea mining so that we can, as the second affirmative mentioned, benefit a company's products, expand a company's products, not even the United States is. Additionally, we have evidence here from exclusive economic zone law, and it says that we cannot develop over 12 nautical miles from shore. So 12 nautical miles obviously is a very shallow area. We cannot go out into the deep sea and go mining legally. It's illegal to do that. Therefore, the affirmative plan is not solvent, and we would like to claim solvency. On the stock issue of disadvantages, I have evidence here from Yale's Environment 360 program. It talks about the problems with deep sea mining. And it says that biologist Cindy Lee Vandover warns that without environmental safeguards, the deep sea vents could be severely damaged. Now, the affirmative team has tried to claim that there would not be substantial harms, there would not be substantial disadvantages to this plan. But clearly, these would be severely damaged, would be severely damaging these vents and the ecosystems around them, which is a massive problem. Evidence here from EMBO reports. They say that, and I quote, industrial exploitation may create environmental problems similar to overfishing and mining of marine areas. Overfishing and mining of marine areas has caused massive environmental damage. And the affirmative team proposes that we do something that could cause damage as great as that. Obviously, there are significant harms to this plan. Additionally, we are not ready to go deep sea mining yet. We have evidence here from Suzanne Goldberg, who is a U.S. environmental correspondent. And she says that, what are we sacrificing by looking at the deep sea with dollar signs on the few tangible materials that we know are there? We haven't begun to truly explore the ocean before we have started aiming to exploit it. We're not ready to go deep sea mining. We're not ready to start expanding deep sea mining yet. We don't know enough about it. We simply don't. And we provided evidence here from an environmental correspondent that says we are not ready for this, and we could have massive harms if we try to go through with this plan. Additionally, there are other more major problems facing us than a need for any need that might exist for rare earth metals. This plan, by investing money in Lockheed Martin instead of using it to solve these problems, would make these problems worse by taking away money from solving them. Such problems include ocean acidification, which the Smithsonian's Ocean Portal program calls climate change's equally evil twin. And it says that it has significant and harmful consequences. We're taking money away from solving something that has significant and harmful consequences, and that has been compared to climate change, which is a massive worldwide problem. The problem has gotten so bad that the Yale Environment 360 program has issued an ominous warning, I quote, an ominous warning on the effects of ocean acidification. All these things are horrible. We're taking money away from these big problems that need to be solved. We need to solve these before we start worrying about rare earth metals and things like that. To sum up my arguments, on the stock issue of topicality, this is not development of the oceans, this is taking things from the oceans. Additionally, this is not developing or having any effect on the oceans. Rather, it is developing, as the second affirmative said, Lockheed Martin's profits. The profits. Thank you, and I now send over the process damage.
Thank you.
So, do you contest our right to the final terms?
No, but we
Thank you.
propose our right to lowest common definition.
You have evidence that the rare earth metals from China are filling our quota for defense. You mentioned that evidence several times. Can I see it?
Yes, my friend.
Awesome. You talked that we have rare earth metals in America. You have evidence on that.
Yes, my friend.
You have evidence on where these mines are, how effective they are, and how much it will cost to bring them to effectiveness.
I'm not
You
sure.
do not, do you?
I'm not
Thank
sure
you.
I understand the need for that evidence at first.
You have stated that you have, I will continue, you do not have evidence on that, to clarify. To continue, would you like to see evidence regarding our inherent barrier?
Yes, please.
Here's one,
Thank you.
please. And here's one more.
Thank you.
You have stated that we are not ready to mine, correct?
No, we're not.
Can you read me the title of this article?
World's first deep-sea mining robot waits for go-ahead.
So you would not contest that this means that we are ready to
No,
mine.
because it's still waiting to be approved.
But it is ready, correct?
The robot is, but we're not ready
I
to do
believe
it.
that
As
that
we
means that
provide
we are ready.
evidence for
Are
it.
you aware that there are mitigation strategies regarding the environment surrounding these claims?
Do you have evidence of that?
Would you like to, can you read this chunk section right there? Or perhaps the first two or three of those?
It's the, one through three.
Yes, please.
Unmined reference area at South SU to provide a parent stock of animals and to allow studies of natural environmental variation away from mining. Temporary refuge area within Solwara 1
All right.
will help with that.
I believe we don't have time, but would you disagree that we are, in fact, moving animals away from the environment?
But we're still having problems. We're still taking away their habitat.
Can you read this highlighted chunk right here?
Yes. Vents themselves would be preserved, undamaged, but the chimneys would be destroyed. These chimneys, however, can be built back over time. And
I believe I'm talking about right here, correct?
yes, over time, and is the equivalent of cutting grass on the ocean floor.
So you would not disagree that that any environmental damage is recoverable?
Well, that's not what that said. That said,
What do you think
that mentioned just one part of the ecosystem. There
So
are
you had
massive
stated,
other
but
parts.
it stated
of
that it was
marine-
bounced back, correct?
One part of it was bounced back.
You agree that rare earth metals are used in green technologies, correct?
Yes.
And you agree that green technologies that create alternate sources of fuel and energy are important to the United States, correct?
Do you have evidence that they are?
I'm asking the questions here, but yes or no question, it's simple. Are they important?
It's important, but as compared to the
They are
massive,
important.
the
Thank you
massive
very much.
ecosystem damage that we're causing.
Times. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. For the last time, my name is Nicholas Caveros, getting first negative for Bishop Stangs Bars, negative 18. I'd like to do my thanks at the beginning because I'm afraid we might run out of time with the severity and length of the issues we're discussing. So I'd like to thank at this time my wonderful partner, the judges, the affirmative team, my wonderful team, my coach, Mr. Thomas Kennedy. I'd like to start my rebuttal by reviewing the arguments for all the different stock issues we have here today. Our argument on topicality starts with the definition of the word federal. The affirmative team involves a plan where the federal government would be permitting and by proxy doing some sort of development, which we get to after. According to the evidence we have here in Indian Defense versus March, permitting doesn't mean it's federal. I'll quote the same way I did in my first constructive. The cases did not hold that the core permits federalize the unregulated private development. Simply permitting something does not make it a federal action. We also take issue with the definition of the word increase. Increase, according to the Union Loan and Trust Company versus Southern California Motor Road Company, which is a Supreme Court case by which the federal government must base all its laws and regulations, because it is a Supreme Court ruling. Increase does not, I quote, include or apply to the first creation. To give it such a meaning would be to inject into provision the word create. Increase is not to create according to the basic definition of it either. Merriam-Webster defines increase as to become progressively greater. They're not increasing mining because the affirmative team has stated that this kind of mining is not currently being done by the federal government. If it's not being done, it doesn't exist, and therefore can't be increased. It doesn't exist at all. The affirmative team also is not exploring or developing the ocean in any way whatsoever, because while there is exploring and development, it's not being done in the ocean. They're simply, by their own admission, developing profits of the private firm, which is not mentioned in the resolve, and also is ethically questionable with the federal government doing business for another company. On the stock issue inherency, the affirmative team did give us evidence that a vote did take place in 2012, and indeed, the vote did not pass by one vote. However, they have not been able to prove that votes have not occurred since. And we're sort of in a Schrodinger's cat situation where we can't assume either way because we don't see it. We don't see the evidence, therefore we don't know what it says. It could say that the vote failed again, and therefore I would need to come up with a different argument. But it also could very well say that a vote occurred and it passed. And the negative team, the affirmative team, and the judges cannot assume either way. Therefore, we have to win the stock issue of inherency. On the stock issue of need, this has been a big issue throughout this entire debate. The Pentagon has specifically said rare earth elements are less at risk in the United States, and we currently have availability that is ample within the United States. The affirmative team has tried to twist this into us saying we're trading with China, and China has significant things to help us. We don't need it. According to Reuters in Washington, D.C., the 2011 scare about Chinese control of rare earth metals critical for defense manufacturing has faded, with market forces boosting production domestically. In the United States, we have a significant and substantial amount of rare earth metals to meet our defense needs. There is no need for the affirmative team's plan, therefore the negative team claims at this time the stock issue is need. On the stock issue of solvency, while the negative team believes that there is no need to be solved whatsoever, if the judges decide differently, we have evidence prepared that states the affirmative team plan cannot in any way solve their need. According to the map I have here from the National Oceanographic and the Atmospheric Administration, the U.S. exclusive economic zone extends 200 miles, not my partner misspoke, nautical miles offshore. Because this mining will be occurring in the middle of the ocean and deep sea, we don't have the jurisdiction. The affirmative team has argued that this is their inherent barrier. It is not. The exclusive economic zone in the law which they're referring to about the United Nations is a completely separate law in its entirety. And as you know, judges, the one law cannot contradict or override another law unless it specifically states or strikes down the other law. So therefore, even if their inherent barrier didn't exist, they could not solve their need. There are many disadvantages that my partner has and will continue to hammer on today. Ocean acidification is being called climate change's evil twin. It is a, quote, significant and harmful consequence of excess carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and human exploration of the ocean, according to the Ocean Portal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, and for the last time, I am Molly Bennett. I represent the Hingham Varsity B team. I'm my first affirmative speaker, and I would like to thank everyone here today, especially our judges and my partner in the negative team, for involving themselves in this debate and donating their time. I would also like to thank, of course, my coach, Mr. Nugent, who has been integral in helping us to develop this plan and helping us to learn how to make it work better within the context of the debate. First and foremost, the negative team addressed topicality, saying that our development was not federal because in a previous case, permits for development were not a federal action. However, we're not merely providing a permit. We stated that we're providing U.S. sponsorship. And under the ISA, you need both a contractor and a U.S. sponsor, and they must jointly agree to undertake this development. And furthermore, under Article 139 of UNCLOS, state sponsors are inherently responsible for the actions of their contractors. We cannot simply dissociate ourselves from illegal actions that they might take, actions that might violate international regulations. We are responsible to keep them within the parameters of international law. We are responsible to try and make them as environmentally sustainable as possible, and we are required to monitor them, something that could be accomplished by an agency like the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which I mentioned before, because of its precedent in the Resource Act of regulating offshore mining. Additionally, they addressed increase or development. However, the only thing we need to demonstrate is that the U.S. federal government is increasing its current development of the oceans, and we argue that exploration and development has already been carried out through agencies like the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Therefore, we're merely building on previous development, previous exploration, and our plan is therefore topical in that respect. They also addressed inherency, saying that because our plan had failed by one vote in 2012, meant that it would be passed in the future, and therefore it was not an inherent barrier. I will remind the judges that in order for an inherent barrier not to be considered an additional disadvantage, you need to demonstrate that it can be overcome in the future based on unique circumstances that exist in the present. After the 2012 election, the political climate changed to become less heated, and the bill also, the treaty also has the support of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and Obama administration. So we believe it would pass in the future, and we also provided the negative team 2014 source, which stated that the United States was not currently a part of the ISA or part of the UNCLOS treaty, which was hindering Lockheed Martin's ability to develop its claims in the first place, demonstrating that there has not been a successful vote on UNCLOS yet. In fact, to my knowledge, there has not even been a vote, but of course you don't report on the absence of a vote, you only report on the presence of a vote. They also addressed need for change, stating that the Pentagon has said that we are currently meeting our defense needs. However, they did not address the effect on American manufacturers that the current lack of availability of rare earth metals has. For instance, as we stated before, American manufacturers sometimes pay about 3 times more than Chinese manufacturers for the same materials, putting them at a competitive disadvantage, and even incentivizing the move of American manufacturers overseas. And so the negative team provided no evidence that under the status quo, these prices would become more reasonable, or that we would be able to provide for their manufacturing needs in the future based on the scarcity of land-based resources. Additionally, in terms of solvency, John Negerpont, the former U.S. Deputy Secretary of State, has stated that Lockheed Martin, upon ISA sponsorship with the U.S. government, would be able to develop its claims. We provided evidence that there's already mining robots that are available. Essentially, the only problem is that Lockheed Martin does not have what it terms clear legal rights defined under the Law of the Sea Convention. It needs these clear legal rights to have security in what are enormously expensive ventures. It's not. Thank you very much.
Thank you. For the final time this season, I am Daniel Feely, debating second negative for Bishop Stangs, varsity negative A team. I would like to thank my partner, the opposing team, and you, the judges, and my team and my coach. On the stock issue of topicality, this plan is not developing anything. It's not developing the oceans, first of all. It is, as the first affirmative and second affirmative has said, developing Lockheed Martin's profits. Additionally, this is not developing anything. It is just taking from the ocean. It's taking from the ocean, not developing the ocean. Additionally, the first affirmative mentioned in rebuttal that Lockheed Martin needed sponsorship and that this plan was to sponsor the Lockheed Martin. Obviously, sponsorship is not exploration, nor is it development, and thus this plan is not topical, and the negative team would like to claim the stock issue of topicality. On the stock issue of need, we have provided ample evidence throughout this debate that we do not any longer rely on China. It was a problem that we relied on China for rare earth metals. That was 4 years ago. Now, as we have provided ample evidence in the form of a Pentagon report and articles about the Pentagon report, we no longer depend on China. We no longer have a lack of rare earth metals. We have, as we've provided the affirmative team's evidence of, rare earth metals in the United States available for use already. Therefore, the negative team would like to thank you. On the stock issue of inherency, the affirmative team has provided us with no evidence that the United States Congress is currently opposed to it. They provided us with one piece of evidence from the Hill, in which a Republican senator says sea treaty might pass after the election. So there is a possibility of this passing, and we're getting this possibility from an article written before the election. It is out of date, and the affirmative team has not proved any inherency. Therefore, the negative team likes to claim inherency. On the stock issue of solvency, firstly, on solvency, we do not have the money to invest in this plan. We simply don't. We have an $18 trillion debt that we need to resolve, and it is to other countries. Where are we going to get the money from? The affirmative team has provided no explanation. Additionally, on the stock issue of solvency, we cannot deep sea mine legally. The exclusive economic zone, which goes 200 nautical miles out, as my partner thankfully corrected me, goes out only 200 miles, which isn't enough to go out into the actual Pacific or Atlantic Ocean and do deep sea mining. We simply can't do it. This plan is illegal and therefore not solvent. Therefore, we believe the negative team's claim solvency. On the stock issue of disadvantages, we have evidence here that I cited earlier from Suzanne Goldenberg, U.S. environmental correspondent, and she says, quote, "What are we sacrificing by looking at the deep sea with dollar signs on the few tangible materials that we know are there? We haven't begun to truly explore the ocean before we have started aiming to exploit it. We're simply not ready to start exploiting the ocean. We're not. We are unready, as this woman, who is clearly an expert in her field, has said." Additionally, we have a quote here from EMBO reports that I cited earlier that says that critics also fear that industrial exploitation may create environmental problems similar to overfishing and mining of marine areas, both of which are massive problems. These are significant disadvantages that outweigh any possible advantage the affirmative plan might have. Additionally, on the second tier disadvantages, spending money on these plans takes away money from solving larger, worldwide problems, such as we have mentioned, ocean acidification. I have evidence here that I cited earlier from Yale's Environment 360 program that said they have issued, I quote, "an ominous warning on the effects of ocean acidification." And it has been called by the Smithsonian Ocean Program as climate change's equally evil twin. Thank you.
Hello, for the final time, my name is Hannah Bosnian, and to save time, I would like to thank everyone in this room, especially our coach, Mr. Nugent, as well. This will be the very last time I will be debating and speaking in my entire high school career. Thank you very much. To begin with topicality, the affirmative team reserves the right to define all terms. The negative team has agreed with this right. They cannot provide contesting definitions. To continue, the negative team has stated that we have stated that our definition of development is to bring from latency to or towards fulfillment. In my cross-examination, I have stated that the exact thing we are developing is the act of mining. The mining itself is latent at the moment, as we are not mining. It will be brought towards fulfillment once Lockheed Martin begins mining. I have stated this in my cross-examination. To continue on to need, the negative team has stated that China does have a monopoly on rare earth metals. I would like to read from a source that the negative team has given us. Quote, "China produces about 98% of the world's yttrium in 2011. 98%. If that's not a monopoly, I don't know what is. I don't think you could get as dependent as needing to get 98% of a certain element from a single country. The negative team has also stated that we have no need because we have rare earth metals within land. We have given the negative team evidence stating that land mining is unfeasible, that the projected profits for land mining are 40,000 kilograms of rare earth metals. In reality, in 2013, the land mines existing within the United States have produced 2,000 tons of rare earth metals. Land mining is not feasible. It is also not as safe or clean as mining within the ocean. The reason China is having issues exporting their rare earth metals is because of their issues with land mining. We have given the negative team evidence of this. Of course, it has not been brought up since because they believe that it is correct. To continue on to inherency, the negative team has stated since we do not know whether or not this law has been passed or not, we may or may not have an inherent barrier. This is an Odd-Schrodinger's cat state. But I would like to argue that if we argued about legal barriers on whether or not they have been passed within the past 20 minutes, then we cannot argue about legal barriers at all, since we could never know. But last time I checked, which was right before this debate, mind you, this law has not been passed or voted on. And again, not voting on something will not be in the news, of course. To continue on to solvency, the negative team has stated that USA claims are within international waters, and hence we cannot mine within them. However, we are within the USA 1 and USA 4 zones, which in truth they are in international waters, but they are within regulations of the ISA. Once UNCLOS passed, once this plan gets put into action, they will be under regulation of the US federal government, of an organization I've stated previously, the NOAA. And the negative team has also stated that our plan is not solvable because we need to spend a lot of money to get these mines into action. Our plan is free. Apparently I have forgot to mention that. It costs no money to sponsor Lockheed Martin. It costs no money to begin mining for these rare earth metals. It costs nothing for us to wean off our dependency of China. It costs nothing for us to get these rare earth metals, to get these metals which are essential, as I have mentioned, for green technologies, for solar power, wind power, etc. And I believe the negative team, yes, they have stated that it may be slightly harmful to the environment, but it is much, much safer and much greener than the land mining that they were proposing we do on the land. It is purer. We have presented sources saying that drilling for these manganese nodules is much like mowing the grass of the ocean. I don't know if you've ever mown the
Thank you.
lawn.
Time.
Speaker.
Thank you.